Should I start now? Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Rozelin. I am a first-year PhD student at Kadir Has University. So today I will present another study related to cooperation, which is related to like religion and cooperation. One factor that we understand in large-scale cooperation through the religiosity. So religions who has like big gods and moralizing gods has an influence on large-scale corporations according to the cultural evolution perspective. And when the god is punish you and monitor you, so you should be careful on your behaviors and you should be pro-social. And then there is a finding in the literature, the link between pro-sociality and religious belief. But recent findings challenge this link and indicating that the importance of religiosity measurement, because if it's measured with self-reports, it's like there is a relationship with pro-sociality, but the link is decreasing when measured with behavioral measures. And also, group dynamics is also important to understand the link between religiosity and pro-sociality. So there is an ongoing study, actually this is in preparation, it's a very cool study that we're currently working on. It suggests that like a pro-sociality and religiosity link is beyond those links, and it also influences the moral consistency, because religiosity can also function as a stabilizer the moral behaviors. So this study is coming from the Templeton Religion Trust Project. So these data already presented by Prof answer, so I will not go through the whole process, but I just want to mention that, we have a generalized pro-sociality score, including like a charity, cooperation, trust, and trustworthiness behavior. And when we look at this as a longitudinal results, religious believers displayed greater consistency in moral attitudes and behaviors than non-believers. So you can also see the results based on each behavior, and there is actually a difference between charity, but the rest of the behaviors, moral behaviors, and also the generalized pro-sociality score, which is composed of the all four behaviors, they are not like different from each other, but we found that there is a moral consistency in believers. So today I will present the experiments that based on these results. So we question that does being religious influence pro-social behavior and behavioral consistency among those like four moral behaviors. And then also we are curious about that. Do religious reminders increase pro-social behavior and moral consistency? And then we make it like a further step, and we also ask like, do secular reminders increase pro-social behavior and moral consistency? Because it is also a monitoring mechanisms that influence individuals' behaviors. So we conducted two different experiments. In the first experiment, we examined the religious and secular primaries' effect on pro-sociality and moral consistency among believers and non-believers. In the second study, we aimed to replicate the first one, but the sample included atheists and religions who are either practicing or not practicing. So in these two studies, we collected data from the US sample. The believers participants are Christian participants, and we have enough sample size to detect an effect through the manipulations that we use and interaction. And the first study, as I mentioned, included believers and non-believers. We have almost equal number of participants for both groups. And in the second study, we collected data from practicing believers, non-practicing believers, and also atheists. So why we do the practicing differences? Because practicing is also a costly signal that to show you are like a better cooperator in your group. And in these two studies, they have exactly the same experimental design. So participants first received priming manipulations. These are either religious, secular, and control. And then participants are asked to respond to three different behavioral tasks, which are donation task, prisoner's dilemma, and trust game. Participants randomly assigned either of these priming manipulations, and before each of these tasks, they received the same manipulation. What manipulation we used? So this is like a novel technique that we developed in our project. So this is currently under review, so it's like a validated task. In the religious priming, we basically ask that to continue select one keyword that best describes the image. So the results should be the sacred, so which is a like an elusive task to make the religious and like secular thoughts more salient before deciding their decision in the moral tasks. In the secular priming manipulation, we gave them the law book, and in the control condition, participants saw a picture of a table. And then like a pro-social behavioral task, we use like the donation task is measuring the charitable giving. Prisoner's dilemma is aimed to measure cooperation. Trust game includes two different moral behaviors, trust and trustworthiness. I will not go over the details of the tasks. From those tasks, we had like a 4 scores, 4 moral behaviors scores, and we calculated the generalized pro-sociality score, which is the overall score that, including these 4 moral behavior. And then we also calculated the moral consistency, which is the standard deviation of this task, because if the variance is lower, it means that participants' behavior are more consistent. If the variation is like higher, it means that participants is like less consistent in their behaviors. Based on these tasks and these moral behaviors and these 2 different scores, I will just present the findings. Yes, in the first study, when we look at each pro-social behavior, believers overall donate more than non-believers, so there is like a main effect of religious identity, and believers donate more in secular and control condition as compared to non-believers. When we look at the cooperation, there is no effect of priming techniques, but there is an effect of like a religious identity. Non-believers cooperated more than believers, so you can see the overall difference between these 2 samples. When we look at the trust, so there is also again a main effect of religious identity. Non-believers have higher trust scores than believers, so it is not. I hope that they are like obvious, but non-believer groups overall has a bit like a higher mean score. And in the trustworthiness scores, there is no main effect or an interaction effect. So when we look at all behaviors in the generalized pro-sociality score, there is no significant effect of priming manipulations, there is no significant effect of religious identity, and no interaction. But when we look at the moral consistency, there is a main effect of priming manipulations. For the sake of like interpretability, I chose that graph. And participants are more consistent under secular priming, so their scores are lower. In the secular condition, their scores are a bit lower, so it means that they are more consistent in their behavior. And also there is a significant main effect of religious identity. Believers are more consistent than non-believers. And there is no interaction between these 2 conditions. When we look at the second study's results for each pro-social behavior, so in the second study, we had like 3 different sample groups: practicing believers, non-practicing believers, and atheists. There is no effect of like a priming techniques in donation behavior, but there is a main effect of religious identity, as in the first study. Practicing believers, in the first study it was like only believers, but in that one, practicing believers donate more than non-practicing believers and atheists. When we look at the cooperation, there is a main effect of religious identity. Practicing believers has a lower cooperative behavior than non-practicing believers and atheists. So when you look at each of the samples, the atheist score are higher than this. There are some interactions between those groups, but I'm not sure if they are like strong enough. I indicated there as well. But yeah, all atheist groups are higher than the control group in practicing believers. And yeah, when we look at the second study's results that continue on the other moral domains, there is also a main effect of religious identity, but no effect of like priming techniques as well. Atheists score on like trust task is like higher than practicing and non-practicing believers. So the results are similar in trustworthiness score as well. So atheists score are higher than practicing believers. So when we compose all of the scores into like a generalized prosociality, there is a main effect of religious identity on generalized prosociality. So practicing believers has a lower generalized prosociality score than atheists. So yeah, it is. I hope that is a bit obvious, but atheists score overall a bit like a higher than practicing believers. But there is no main effect of priming and also interaction effect between them. Yeah, when we look at the moral consistency, we can see like a main effect of religious identity again. So practicing believers are more consistent than atheists in that results compared to the like generalized prosociality score. Practicing believers more consistent. Again, there is no main effect of priming and interaction effect between them. And you can also again see the atheist scores, like overall scores a bit higher than practicing believers, so lower score means that the more consistent are those individuals. When we look at the overall scores of the two experimental studies, believers donated more than non-believers, but when we look at the other moral domains, believers cooperated less than non-believers, and also practicing believers cooperated less than atheists in the second study. It is similar in the trust domain as well. Believers had lower trust score than non-believers. It is also similar to practicing believers and atheists. And there is one significant result in the second study. Practicing believers had lower trustworthiness scores than atheists. When we look at the generalized prosociality, the effect is still on the religious identity. Practicing believers scored lower than atheists in second study, but in the first study there is no difference in overall prosociality score. In moral consistency, in both studies, believers and practice believers were more morally consistent than non-believers and atheists. And the secular priming increased moral consistency in the first study, but not in the second study. So this should be we should be like cautious about that results. So yeah, the good thing is that consistent with the correlational study, the longitudinal study that we found is like religious belief can be a moral stabilizer rather than just only having a link between prosociality and religion. So believers overall showed a greater moral consistency. Secular reminders may support higher moral consistency in anonymous context, but it is also like an open question and further questions that should be tested because it is not consistent between these two experiments. So why believers' scores on cooperation and also trust is lower? It might be that believers' higher donations, why they are lower in cooperation and trust but higher in donation only is that believers' higher donations may reflect parochial norms when they can choose the recipient of the group at that specific task. But in the other games, in the other tasks, the recipient was anonymous. So participants interact with anonymous others in the prisoner's dilemma and trust game. So in these contexts, religious social norms may be less relevant. But as a further step, as a follow-up study, maybe it should be examined the recipient identity. Then maybe we find the effect of religiosity. And also the patterns may vary depending on sample characteristics, country context, because it is the sample is coming from the US, and which groups of believers and atheists are being compared. So these are the finding words, and thank you for listening.
very interesting study. Thank you very much. Listening to the results made me wonder about the socioeconomic backgrounds of the believers and non-believers, because it's a U.S. sample, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Non-believers tend to be more educated than, especially than practicing believers. And I wonder if, and education goes along with social status.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether finding out about socioeconomic background would be useful in a follow-up study.
Yeah, it might be. We can also check in the data. We have their socioeconomic background as well.
If you have something like years of education, that could be a proxy.
Not exactly, but their degree we have. Maybe
yes.
We can check that.
You can do it.
Yeah, but also those participants are prolific workers, and they are just completing those studies with a really like a minimum amount of money. So I am not sure if they are really high or like different.
But you could be a student and need money, and you could be an unemployed factory worker and need money. So I mean,
yes, this makes sense. I will going to check definitely. Thank you.
Most of them use this selection.
Yeah. Do we do that for SES?
I think it's open, yeah. To adapt on what Diane Solar has said, maybe you can do, I think in my knowledge, the American samples, you can use post-stratification to understand the effect on the population if this is your estimate. Because I think US Bureau releases the proportion of people who are religious, also this, also that. So since you are using since data comes from a selection bias, right? Because the representative sample of US Americans are doing some different stuff other than participating in a research, because of the maybe more socioeconomically, maybe the people who have higher degrees are more interested in this type of studies. So maybe you can take your estimate and you fit a model and try to see how the effect changes on the population that you're interested in by grabbing that population from the US Bureau and checking the estimate that way. So it might be an adapt to what Diane Solar said.
Thank you. I will definitely do that. We haven't started to write the manuscript, so these are like great contributions. Thank you so much. I will check that.
All right, I can also ask a question.
Yes.
The core idea of these studies was, religion makes people more consistent. However, we find that secular priming made them more consistent.
Yeah.
This is, I think, not surprising because, institutional punishment would work for everyone. But if you don't believe in supernatural punishers, you wouldn't, change your behavior. But did we check if religious primes made believers more consistent between, each other?
No. If you are asking the interaction of them, the secular priming was increased the moral consistency all the participants, not specifically for the religion.
That's very expectable.
Yeah. What was your question?
Maybe religious primes made only believers consistent, made believers consistent, but not the whole population, whole sample.
Yeah, the results doesn't show that because I also checked the interaction if any of the subgroups are interacting with the either manipulations, but no, but and also the secular priming influence is only occurred in the first study, so we couldn't find in the second study, but but unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you.
Like about the difference between pro-social and cooperation game among religious people. So there's this additional benefit in the pro-sociality, like the
generalized pro-sociality.
Not generalized pro-sociality, but what was you used the dictator game or what was it? So dictator game.
It was the donation task.
Donation task.
Yeah.
So there's an additional benefit, at least theoretically, for the religious people, like a bonuses for afterlife, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen in the cooperation game.
Yes.
So do you articulate on this in your paper? Because this is like an implicit benefit of. I think they don't. It's good to give without expecting anything in return, right? For heaven.
Yeah.
Is it the case?
I mean, I think this is one way to interpret the results. I mean, in donation tasks, the are like higher, their scores are higher, but not on the other ones. I mean, in the donation task, they had to choose the specific charity. So, I mean, they may also motivate them to feel connected with that charity. This might be the one mechanism, might be your like contribution, and the other mechanism might be to the connection with that charity. But the other ones are like with the anonymous participant. There requires a reciprocity with the anonymous participant. But in that one, of course, it's making like credit for heaven for them, maybe.
It might be interesting to compare these mechanisms in different games for different groups.
I think we will give a break now.
Yeah, we will start 10 minutes later. 4:10.
4:10. We'll start at 4:10.